So MySQL is basically a database system to store our data on web. It uses standard SQL. So the statements or commands that we will write would be similar to SQL. Same SQL queries we will write, but those queries will be executed on MySQL server. It is very fast, reliable, and easy to use, and it is ideal for both small and large scale applications. So MySQL provides us all kind of facilities or all kind of features that are required for a sophisticated database that can be used either in small applications or either in large scale applications. It can be a simple application, one-page application, or it can be a huge application that might be on many servers, or that can have multiple subdomains like that. So MySQL is a suitable database for PHP because in PHP we are having a library that lets us use MySQL database with PHP. So we will try to understand that. Now, what a database is? A database is a unique application that organizes a group of data. So in order to save our data in groups, we basically use databases. So in a database, the data is basically saved in terms of rows and columns. Like a table is created, and for each record there is a single row, and multiple rows are stored in a particular table. Any number of rows can be stored in a table, and each row have multiple columns. For example, there is a data to save student information. So a student can have student name, student roll number, student seat number, and a lot of things regarding a student. So in that case, student name, roll number, seat number, etc. will be the columns, and data for multiple students will be in rows. Like we create normal tables, you might be aware of how we save data into table, display data into table. Each database application has one or more APIs for creating, managing, accessing, searching, and duplicating data it holds. Because the database system is basically run by APIs that are already in that management. That's why a group of those API is called database management system. So each DBMS is having some APIs. To those APIs, we simply provide the instruction, or we call their function, either to create a row in the table, or to manage, to update a row in the table, or to access the data from the database. Okay, so API is application programming interface. It simply means basically if a API is written in a programming language, it can be written into PHP itself, and we simply provide an interface like XML to access that particular thing. An API is an application programming interface. Simply means it is an interface with which any language can interact and get the data. So for example, we have written an API in PHP language, and the interface or the door means we are accessing that particular script using XML. So a third party that want to get the data from that API will pass the data to XML. That XML will again pass that data to the PHP script, and that script will execute that particular data, and that data will again be returned in XML, and XML will be returned to that particular third party that is trying to access the API. So a common interface is developed in between the script and the user or the observer that is looking for the data. So in that case, we can access the data from any server, from any script, from any language. Basically, this topic is not the part of this module, so I'm not going to explain that in much details. But API is a script that can be accessed by any language. It can be written in any language, but the interface that is provided is a common interface, a common language like XML that is accessible by any language. Okay, so API provides some functions. We simply call those functions to do our job. So in database systems, the API provides create query, it provides us update query, it provides us delete query. Even we can check the duplicacy of a particular thing. For example, we are having a special column in our database table that is called primary key. and we access rows of that particular table using this primary key. Primary key simply means that it is the most important column of that table, and this will be used, and this we cannot have duplicate primary keys for multiple rows in a table, like student's roll number. Roll number of 2 students in a class cannot be same. So this roll number can be treated as primary key. So this is the most important column of that table. Using that primary key, we can access any row from a table using that particular key into condition. So we are having APIs. For example, if you have defined some key as primary key and you try to put 2 rows having the same primary key, it will give you an error that you cannot have duplicate primary keys. So this kind of all creating, managing, deleting, accessing, or duplicate data. So all these kind of features are provided by a database management system. So using a database, we are having APIs, or we are having functions of those APIs that lets us access, manage, or update the data of a database very easily. So what is RDBMS? RDBMS. I have already explained to you that RDBMS simply means Relational Database Management System, in which multiple tables can be connected with each other using a foreign key. I will let you know that what a foreign key is using the practical example. For now, I will just explain that if there is a table A, it is having a key. For example, there is a table student, and in student we are having student ID. You can have student ID as roll number of that student. Now there is another table that is books table. Now you have to see that which book is related to which student. So for saving this kind of data, what we will do, we will pick student ID from student table, and we will save that column in books table, and we will put student IDs which are having in front of each the book that each student holds. So this way, if we have to access that which are the books of a particular student, using the student ID column in books table, we can get the value that how many books belongs to a particular student. So this student ID in books table is called foreign key, because it is the primary key of another table, but we are using it in another table to access the data of that table related to that particular table. So this is a definition of foreign key. So now lot of databases are there in market, relational database systems are there, but MySQL is one of the most popular database that runs on the line of SQL itself. It uses the SQL queries itself to execute, but that again is on web. Means MySQL is a server that can be implemented a web system or a website to access the data from database. Good. So a database is basically a collection of tables with associated data. So a database is a collection of tables, related tables, and those tables are having relation with each other in terms of keys, using the keys as already told you regarding the foreign key. Next is table. A table is a matrix. Yes, it's a kind of matrix. This particular thing where this stuff is written, this terminology is written, itself is a table. So if you can see, this is the first row, then table 1 is the second row, then column 1 is the third row, and it is having each row is having 2 columns. I think it is clear to everybody, means how we save data into databases in tables. So this again is a table. The same structure is followed in the database. So database table is a matrix that looks like a simple spreadsheet where we save our database with in terms of columns and multiple rows. So column, again, it is a particular element or a area where we can store a particular value for a table. Row is a group of related data. All columns, a set of single set of columns will create a row, single set of another column will create the second row. So this way we can create the rows. Redundancy simply means that we cannot store, means redundancy means storing a particular information more than once. So redundancy, we basically avoid redundancy in our databases using normal forms. We are having first normal form, second normal form, third normal form, work normal form, and so more. Means there are a lot of normal form, fourth normal form, fifth normal form. So we can discuss that stuff later. Next is primary key. I've already told you that it is a unique key that cannot be duplicated and that is having a unique value for each row. That is the most important column of a table. Next is foreign key. A foreign key is a key that becomes the reason for the connection between two tables, for the linking between two tables. Next is compound key. It is a composite key. For a table, we can have a single column as a key, or we can keep more than one column to be primary key. So if we have to access a particular value using those two columns, we will give value of those two columns in our query, in our where condition, to access that particular row. So composite key simply means more than one column will be part of primary key. So that is composite key. Index, basically key, primary key itself is an index. Index is a thing. For example, in a book, we are having, if you people are aware that in any book, before the content of the book starts, there is an index. The chapter name is written there. Then you have topics name written there. In front of topic name, you have the page number on which page you can find a particular topic. Okay, Nusrat, when we will do the practical stuff, I will let you know the compound key what is. Yes, practically I will show you the composite key or compound key. So now MySQL database. Nowadays, big and small organizations, all kind of organizations are using MySQL database as their main database. Even organizations like Google, Microsoft, Facebook, Oracle, all these are using MySQL database for any or many of their applications. So it is becoming very, very popular these days. It has been developed by a Swedish company, MySQL AB. So there were many reasons for choosing. First of all, MySQL, it's an open source database. It is free of course. You don't have to pay anything to get this MySQL database. It is a powerful software and it easily connects with the web. It uses a SQL data language, like we can write simple SQL statements to do our job. You don't have to use some special syntax or special language constructs to make your queries. That can be similar to SQL. Moreover, it can work with languages like, it can work with desktop languages like C, C++, Java, and also on the web technology like PHP. It is very responsive to PHP language, means it is very much comfortable. We simply use library of PHP to access MySQL database, and easily we can access anything. We can write any query, we can delete any record. So it is very comfortable stuff to use MySQL with PHP. So 4 GB is the default size limit for a table. Each table can have data up to 4 GB, and 4 GB simply means a huge data. 4 GB is, in terms of data, it is a huge memory space, 4 GB. So up to 8 million terabyte we can save into a MySQL database. So this database is able to handle huge data. So it can be used with any kind of application, whether it's a small application or it's a big application. So it fits in our specific environment. It doesn't, a MySQL database doesn't have special environment requirements. It can fit into any normal environment. You don't have to provide some special settings or special configuration for it. It will adopt each and every environment that you will install. So it is very flexible kind of database. Now, here is a link where you can download your MySQL database. So here you have to select your MySQL version. Basically, it can be for Windows or it can be Linux. You have to select that particular version. It is having multiple versions, like MySQL 5 is having different features, MySQL 6, the latest version, is having different features. So based on our requirement, we basically download our MySQL installation. Now here are some of the steps of installing the MySQL. So you simply have to download the MSI file or the installer of MySQL, and you can simply run that installer to get installed into in your system. So here are some of the things. MySQL is a database server that manages database that I have already explained to you people. Then MySQL client, it is a client program that is used to connect and interact with the server. So here MySQL Bench, like MySQL Bench, SQL Yog, these are some of the clients that lets us write down the queries, that gives us the interface where we can write down the queries and execute on the server. I will let you know some of the MySQL clients. I will show you practically regarding them. Then MySQL shared, it is a shared library for MySQL client. Basically MySQL provides a library that can be accessed by any MySQL client. So that library is basically shared between various clients. Next we have MySQL Bench. This is again a interface that lets us understand or execute our MySQL. I don't have MySQL Bench, but I will show you SQL Yog on my system. So I think people are clear till now, so that we can move to the next slide. Yeah, Chandra Somajit, is it clear? And can we move ahead? Okay, fine. Let's move ahead then. So here you can see this is a SQL Yog that is a client to access or to write down our queries. Here you can create a new connection, and for each connection you will be having some host address, you will be having some username, you will be having some password, port number. By default the port number is 3306, and by default the username is root and password is blank. This is the default setting whenever you install XAMPP or WAMP or MySQL server on your system. You can change it through your MySQL configuration file, and you can access in PHP INI. I have shown you already PHP INI. There is a setting called default MySQL default username, MySQL default password, MySQL default host name. So these settings you can change, and then these value will be updated accordingly. You have to put those values there. So here my host is localhost, username is root, password is blank, and port is 3306. So I will click on connect. Now it is connected to MySQL server. This client is now here. I can write down my queries like select queries or delete queries. So this particular interface is now connected to my database server with the settings, with the username, password, and localhost host address that I have provided. So these are the basic databases that are currently on MySQL, on my MySQL server on my local system. So here are some of the steps how to install MySQL on Linux, Unix, or Windows. This is the step how we can install into Unix. Like you will get this RPM file and you have to run this on your system. It will be installed in USR bin, and default database library will be created in where lib MySQL directory. So these are the basic steps of installing MySQL on your system, on Linux system. So this is the way we can get the values, we can get MySQL installed on our system. So these are the RPM files that we get while we install an installer for Linux. We get RPM files, and one by one we install these RPMs to get MySQL installation on our system. Next, again for Windows, we have to download the exe file, and we have to download the installer package, and we have to unzip it. There is a setup.executable file. We execute this file and MySQL gets installed to our system. We have to provide the path where we need to install it. By default it gets C MySQL, and in that bin we get our MySQL installation. So these are some of the basic steps to install MySQL on our Windows system or Linux system.